Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, distinguished guests, and the honorable members of Congress and the Senate. Welcome to the official opening ceremony of the Third General Assembly of the World Uyghur Congress. It's our great pleasure and honor to have you attend and speak at this very special event with historic significance in Uyghur people's peaceful struggle for human rights, democracy, and freedom. First, we would like to begin with the national anthem of East Turkestan and the United States of America.
Tümende Şark Türkistan'ın ve Amerika'nın devlet marşıyla başlayınız.
Hanım'a oturun. Please stand. Next is the U.S. national anthem.
O'er the ramparts we watch.
Next, I would like to introduce Madame Rabia Kadir. Ms. Rabia Kadir is a democratic leader of the Uyghur people in East Turkestan. She spent nearly 6 years in a Chinese prison for standing up to the authoritarian Chinese government. Ms. Kadir, 63, is the mother of 11 children and a very wealthy millionaire once. Before her arrest by the Chinese government in 1999, she was one of the most prominent Uyghur businesswomen and the 7th richest entrepreneur in China. She was released by China to the US on medical parole basis on March 17, 2005, due to persistent international pressure, above all from Washington. Ms. Kadir has been actively campaigning for the human rights and freedom of the Uyghur people since her release. She was the founder and president of the International Uyghur Human Rights and Democracy Foundation in Washington, D.C. She was also elected as the president of the Uyghur American Association in May 2006. She was also elected as the president of the World Uyghur Congress in November 2006. The Uyghur people in the US, in Europe, and around the world closely rally behind her and support her efforts to change the terrible human rights situation of the Uyghur people in East Turkestan. Despite Chinese government's efforts, relentless efforts to demonize and discredit her, she's recognized as the most prominent Uyghur leader and the mother of the Uyghur nation by all Uyghurs.
Rabia Hanım zemmimiz sulayımız. Sekin çavraylı. Rabia Hanım.
Hürmetli hanımlar, efendiler, muhterem kongres azaları, dünyanın her qaysı joylardan kelgan aziz qurultay vakilleri ve mehmonlar, Dünya Uyghur Qurultayının 3. navbatdagi vakillar qurultayiga hoş geldinglar. Hoş geldinglar. Bugün sizlerden kıymetli vaqtlarını sarf qilib, Uyghur xalqi uchun tarixiy ahamiyatga ega bo'lgan bu qurultayda ishtirok qilganliginglar uchun bizni gururlandırdıgan bu işler için biz sizlerge ayrım rahmet etimiz ve âli ihtiram bildiririz. Şarkı Türkistan davasının ihtiyacına asasen muhaciret Şarkı Türkistan davasının işçi çoğun vekilleri organı olan Şarkı Türkistan Uyguristan Milli Kurultayı bilen Dünya Uyghur Yaşları Kurultayı 2004 yılı April'da Germaniyanın München şehrinde birleşme kurultayı çağırıp Şarkı Türkistan Milli Hakiminin bir tolup hukukluk merkezi organı Dünya Uyghur Kurultayı'nı kurup çıkan idi. Bunun bilen vatan sırtındaki milli davayımızda uzun yıllardan bu yan sadır bulup kelgen teşkili cihetteki tarqaqlar, siyasi cihetteki fikir ihtilafları hatimi verilip, teşkili ve siyasi cihetteki birlik işe aşırıldı. Vatan sırtındaki barlık Uyghur teşkilatlarının vekillerinin katılışı bilen 2016 yılı 11. ayda Dünya Uyghur Kurultayı'nın 2. nöbetçi vekiller kurultayı yani Germaniyanın München şehrinde içildi. Kurultay ilip verilgan demokratik saylamda men Rabia Kadir vekillerinin birdek avazı bilen Dünya Uyghur Kurultayı'nın reisliğine saylandı. Men Dünya Uyghur Kurultayı'nın vazifesini ötep kelgen 3 yılga yakın vakittin bu yan Dünya Uyghur Kurultayı'nın dünyanın her qaysı joylaridagi rahbarlari yani muavin reisler, icraya komitet azaları, başka atıklık, kurultay vekilleri, şundakla Dünya Uyghur Kurultayı'nın terkibideki barlık Şarkı Türkistanlık teşkilatlar mana zich masışıp Dünya Uyghur Kurultayı'nın faaliyetlerinin üzlüksüz taraf kılışı için can fidalık bilen hizmet kılıp geldi. Neticede Dünya Uyghur Kurultayı'nın çeklik iktisadi, imkanı çeklik, adam küçü aciz bilen xeyli köprüler hizmetlerini ilip verildi. Ben huzurunlarda 3 yıldan bu yan men bilen birge hizmet kılgan milli davayımız için cümleden Dünya Uyghur Kurultayı'nın faaliyetleri için ecir sindirgen, fidakarlık kılgan Uyghur davasının halkaralı işi ve halkaralı Uyghur davasında hissdaşlık kılgıcı Uyghur dostluğunun köpeyişinin aktif rol oynayan septaşlarımızga alaylı rahmet etmen, yanı ihtiram bildirmen. Yani Uyghur kişilik hukuk vaziyetiga yakından ko'ngil bo'lib kelgan ve onun faaliyetini can ko'ngildan qo'llab Xitoy hukumatining har xil besim ve qarashlarga pisand qilmay demokratiya, kişilik hukuk, erkinlik, haqiqiy ro'yini, himmatini rolini namoyon qilgan Amerika Avam Palata ve Kengash Palataning barliq a'zolariga, shundaqla bizning harakatimizni moliya jihatdan qo'llayotgan NED'ning raisi Karl Girishman efendi ve Loisa Hanım, Tanlantos Kişilik Hukuk Komitesi'nin müdiri Hanis efendim, Amerika Devlet Meclisi ve İcraiye Amerika Halklar Dini Erkinlik Komitesi Halkara Kaçırım Teşkilatlarının mesulü Kumar efendim, onun baş katibi Marino ve efendi Hater Astı'daki Halklar Teşkilatının mesulleri İtalya Kengash Palata Azam Marco efendim Katarlık azalar bunun başka ismi atanılgan her kaysi devletlerdeki Uyghur davasına yakında yardım kılgan parlament azaları, halkara teşkilatlarının vekilleri, kişilik hukuk faaliyetçilerine ayrım ayrım rahmet etmem ve bunlara ayrım ihtiram bildirmem. Hanımlar, efendiler, Dünya Uyghur Kurultayı kurulgandan buyon Şark Türkistan halkının haqiqiy arzu istekleriga amal qilgan asoslar Şark Türkistan halkının erkinligi, demokratiyasi, kişilik hukuki, öz taqdirini öz belgilash hukukini qo'lga keltirish asas maqsad qilgan holda kurash qilib keldi. Dünya Uyghur Kurultayı'nın faaliyetleri tinchlik usullari bilan elib berishda chim turib, terrorist, shiddat qo'llanish, zo'ravonlik qilishga qat'iy rad qildi va qarshi turib keldi. Dünya Uyghur Kurultayı'nın faaliyetlerinde BDT'nin bütün nizamlaması, kişilik hukuk umumu bayanlaması, halkaralık iqtisadi ijtimai medeniyet hakları kilişimi öz içine algan barlık halkaralık ahkamlar ve her kaysi devletlerinin kanunlarına hürmet kılışını asas prensip kılışka çın turup geldi. Dünya Uyghur Kurultayı kurulgandan bu yana halkara teşkilatlar bilen birge hemkarlık güçlerini alayida ehmiyet verip kelgen idi. Lakin 3 yıl jarayonida xalqaro tashkilot bilan bo'lgan hamkorligi yuqori bosqichga ko'tarildi. Bo'lib bu xalqaro kechirim tashkiloti, kishilik huquq kuzash tashkiloti, xatar ostidagi tashkilot, xalqaro muhojirlar tashkiloti, vakolatsizlar millatlar tashkiloti, chegara inson haqlari tashkiloti va shuningdek nurg'unlagan tashkilotlar bilan nurg'un faoliyatlarni ilib bordi. Xalqaroliq eng yuqori darajali tashkilotlar bilan munosabat bog'ladi. Har qaysi davlatlarning hukumat va parlamentlar bilan yaqin munosabat kuruşqa, ularga Uygurlar duch kelayotgan vaziyatlarni haqida vaqti-vaqtida ma'lumot berishga tirishib keldi. Bulup bu demokratiya, kişilik hukuk ahmiyet verilgan demokratik devletlerinin hükümet ve parlamentleri bilen yakında münasebet kurup ularga Uygur meselesini anlatish jihatda ko'pligan hizmetlerini işlendi. Avrupa Parlamenti BDT kişilik hukuk kengashi bir qator faoliyatlar elib bordi. Kurultayımız halkara matbuat bilen bo'lgan aloqada intayin ko'ngil bilib keldi. Dunyoning har qaysi joylarida Dünya Uyghur Kurultayı rahbarlari o'zlari turishlik davlatlardagi gazet, jurnal, radio organlari bilan yaqin munosabat qurishga tirishib, Uyghur masalasining xalqaro matbuotlarda belgili ta'sir qo'zg'ashini qo'lga keltirdi. Bular Uyghur masalasining xalqaroda tanilishi, Uyghur do'stlarining ko'payishiga intayin muhim rol o'ynadi. Uyghur teşkilat rahbarları, yaşlarımız, demokratiya, kişilik hukuk, halkara kanun bilimler bilen terbiyeleş programlarını elip verildi. Dünya Uyghur Kurultayı'nın maddi yardım beriş bilen NED'nin maddi yardım berişi bilen arkadan elip verilgan Uyghur rehberlerine demokratiya ve kişilik hukuk boyunca terbiyeleş programısının rolü intayin zor oldu. Hatta programma vatan işçiliki, halkımızda karta demokratiya, kişilik hukuk teşvikatı elip verişimizde intayin çok rol oynadı. Tekrar aldığım günü 18-19 May günleri Dünya Uyghur Kurultayı'nın BDT'nin maddi kuruluş, NED'nin maddi kuruluşu, hemkarlışı bilen Şarkı Türkistan'ın Xitay Komünist işgal astidagi 60 yıl namlı halkara yığın muvaffakiyet ötküzdü ve muvaffakiyet ayaklaştı. Hanımlar, efendiler, biz dünyanın her kaysı joylardan kelgan Uyghur teşkilatlarının rahberleri ve vekiller, mihmallar, Dünya Uyghur Kurultayı'nın 3. nöbet vekiller kurultayı için Washington'da cem bulup bugün Amerika Kongresi'nin içinde kurultayımızın eciliş murasimini galbilik ötküzüşke muvaffak oldu. Bizge bu şaraitni yaratып bergen, bugün bu sorumluluk edip bizge zor manevi ilham bergen, bizni kollagan kıymetli kongres azalarına yana bir qitim rahmet eytimen Amerika hükümetiga, Amerika kongresiga cheksiz hurmatlarimni, rahmetimni bildiraman. Altımızdaki 3 gün jarayonida Dünya Uyghur Kurultayı'nın ötken 3 yıl içinde elip bargan umumiy xizmatları xulosalanıp ve ko'zdan ko'chirildi. Vakillarning ciddi müzakereleri bilan bundan keyin yurgizmoqchi bo'lgan yeni strategiyasi ve xizmat planları Sharq Turkiston Milliy harakatining yeni yo'l xaritasi bekitilib chiqildi. Kurultayning rahbarlarining hay'ati demokratik usulda saylab chiqilib, kurultayning nizomnomasi qarta dunyo vaziyatiga davoyimizning ehtiyojiga mos holda zo'r bo'lgan tuzitish kirgizildi. Hemimizge ma'lum bo'lgandek Uyghur Milliy harakatining xalqaralashishning qadimi tezlashayotgandan sarosimaga tushgan Xitoy hukumati xalqimizga qaratgan osmila siyohatini, zulmi, besimi hasilab oshirib bormoqda. Bugün Uyg'urlarning milliy madaniyati, milliy mavjudligi tarixdan bu yana har qanday vaqtdan bakrak zo'r xavfga duch kelmoqda. Xalqimiz vatan sirtida elib berilayotgan milliy harakatimizdan, jumladan bu qitimli qurultayimizdan zo'r umid kutmoqda va to'rt ko'zi bilan tashlab turmoqda. Barliq vakillarning o'rtaq tirishchilik ko'rsatishi bilan tajribalarimiz ve kıymetli teklif fikirlerini oturup koyuş bilen milli davayımızın güçlendirishi, halkımızın ümidiga cevap verişinin en yaxshi, en önemli emeli çare tedbirlerini tüzüp çıkıdığalıkı işlenen, kurultayımızın galbilik ahırlışıdığalıktan ümit kılman. Ahırda bütün yakın katlaştıkçılarına, bülüptü dünyanın her kaysı caylardan cebir cefalar bilen, uzak musafirlerden besip kelgen vekillerge, mihmallarga yanı bir qitim rahmet etmen ve ahırda yanı âli ihtiram bildirmen. Yani şikayet ağzımı yakıp ütüp etey. Bugünkü bizden Dünya Uyghur Kurultayımız, gerçi biz dünyanın hem yerinden adamlar geldik, 106 vekil kaptı ve şu Dünya Uyghur Kurultayı'na nur bulduğun göherler tekliflerini kaptı. Bugünkü bu bir gün biz için etkanda tarihte hiç görülmegen, hatta özümüz ümitimizde düşünümüzde mi ekranırken bir minut dep karayman. Çünkü biz muşu halkımızga, muşu sahnede, muşaga, yaşlarımızda töküş için neticillap 60 yıldan beri taşnab olgan bu kongres, bütün dünya halkının takdirini belgileydiğen kongres, bütün dünya halkının takdirini oylaşıdığan ve izilgen milletlerge köngül bölüdüğen bu ah gümbezinin astıda sizler öz halkınlarının takdiri için bir yerde baş oturursunlar. Şunun için ben sizlerini ve öz namımdan, 20 milyon halk namıdan bu muşundak bir günkü müyesser boğallıklar için tebrikleyim. Bazen Orta Asya'daki devletlerimiz özü içinde müstakil otkası müstakillikten kadriga yetmegandek bu yerga kirib o'tlasak yig'inzaliga chiqib ketdik deb qadriga yetmay qolganlar. Sizlarning qimmatli qadiminglarning har bir orzu yo'qliginglarning amaliy ahvolinglarning hammasi mishada shishiladi. Shuni bugun o'zinglarning yaxshi fikrlarini anglab, yaxshi fikrlarni o'ylab, yaxshi natijalarga erishishinglarni Xudodan tilayman. Rahmat.
Thank you very much, Madam Rabia. I'll do the interpretation of her speech. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, honorable members of Congress, and dear friends. Welcome to the World Uyghur Congress's 3rd General Assembly. I want to thank you for attending this historic event. The World Uyghur Congress was founded in 2004 in Munich, Germany, after the East Turkestan and the Uyghurstan National Congress and the World Uyghur Youth Congress merged into one unified organization to represent the legitimate interests of the people of East Turkestan, ending decades of fragmentation of Uyghur organizations worldwide. Thus, World Uyghur Congress's first General Assembly is a historic milestone in Uyghur people's peaceful struggle for human rights, democracy, and freedom. The World Uyghur Congress Second General Assembly was convened again in Munich in November 2006, in which Uyghur democracy leader Mr. Abir Kadir was unanimously elected as president by all the delegates from different countries. Since I became the president of the World Uyghur Congress, all Uyghurs who work at the World Uyghur Congress, all World Uyghur Congress officials and the country representatives in different countries closely worked with me and rallied behind me. As a result, World Uyghur Congress has been able to achieve unprecedented progress, even with lack of financial resources and staff members. Taking this opportunity, I want to express my deep gratitude to the hardworking World Uyghur Congress officials, voluntary staff members, especially country representatives, and those who work with World Uyghur Congress and closely support our activities. Without their support, we could not have achieved such marvelous achievement and this international recognition. I just want to say that we also want to thank the National Endowment for Democracy, whose president is Mr. Carl Gershman, and whose East Asia director is Ms. Louisa Cohn, for their persistent support of our global operation, for the funding of our 4 different organizations. And as you know, the World Uyghur Congress has also closely worked with the Tibetan and Inner Mongolian groups and also with Chinese dissidents to promote the same struggle. Therefore, the World Uyghur Congress has been able to establish a very good rapport with all these important global players in Chinese politics and human rights. The World Uyghur Congress has also worked diligently to meet with the high-level government officials in different Western democracies and to raise human rights violations of the Uyghur people in the highest level. To that end, the World Uyghur Congress carried out a number of campaigns at UN and the European Parliament level, as well as here in Washington. The World Uyghur Congress has also established productive, fruitful relations with members of the international media. As a result, almost all major media in all the World Uyghur Congress representative and umbrella countries have reported on the human rights violations of the Uyghur people and our peaceful struggle. In order to prepare Uyghur leaders to act in international level, the World Uyghur Congress conducted several democracy training workshops with the generous financial support of National Endowment for Democracy. The fruit of such trainings has been exceptional, has been marvelous. In fact, we have just held a 2-day conference on May 18th and 19th. The conference entitled East Turkestan, 60 Years Under the People's Republic of China Rule. It was also a huge success. We want to thank NED for providing the venue. At the same time, in all of our success, I couldn't emphasize more the support that we get here on the Hill from members of the Congress, members of the Senate, and also from a number of international human rights watchdogs, such as Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, Human Rights in China, UNPO, and the Threatened People's Organization, and other NGOs and individuals who have closely supported us. I want to particularly note the support of late Congressman Tom Lantos for his passion for human rights and his support of the Uyghur people's struggle, and also the director of the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission, Mr. Hans Hagerfe, and all those members of Congress and the senators who care about Uyghur people's struggle, who care about Uyghur people's human rights, who stand side by side with us in our common struggle for freedom and human rights. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to emphasize that the World Uyghur Congress seeks to peacefully achieve human rights, democracy, and freedom for the Uyghur people in East Turkestan. In its struggle for such noble goals, World Uyghur Congress will only use peaceful and non-violent means and shall never use but oppose terrorism and the use of violence in any shape and form. The World Uyghur Congress, in its peaceful pursuit of these objectives, will respect all UN declarations and instruments concerning human rights, democracy, freedom, and self-determination. I also want to emphasize that the World Uyghur Congress established close working and cooperative relationship, of course, with many members of international media, and we deeply appreciate their positive coverage of the Uyghur people's peaceful struggle for their human rights and freedom. Today, we are privileged to hold the opening ceremony of the World Uyghur Congress Third General Assembly at this magnificent U.S. Capitol. I want to thank the Capitol Visitor Center for reserving this wonderful conference room for us, and also thank Congressman Smith's office for their assistance. In the following 3 days, the World Uyghur Congress will officially convene and will seriously discuss our previous successes and failures. And the World Uyghur Congress will also recommend new plans and strategies to strengthen our work in the world, to raise the Uyghur human rights and democracy issue around the different capitals. At the meantime, the World Uyghur Congress will also democratically elect its new leadership. Today, the Uyghur issue is being internationalized. At this time, the Chinese government is doing all its best to prevent the internationalization of the Uyghur issue, has in fact intensified its repressive and also assimilationist policies toward the Uyghur people. And at this critical juncture, the Uyghur people in East Turkestan put their hope in the World Uyghur Congress and in the Uyghur people in exile. I'm confident that with the support of the free world, especially the United States, Western Europe, and all the human rights organizations and other NGOs, I believe that our peaceful struggle shall succeed, and we will find a way to peacefully struggle for our freedom and human rights, and we will achieve the noble goals that we all long for so long. Thank you all. I want to briefly add what Ms. Gaudier added to her speech. Ms. Gaudier stated that we are very pleased that some 106 members of the members of the World Uyghur Congress came from different countries all over the world to attend this very special meeting this morning. This meeting has a historic significance because we are holding this meeting at the Capitol building of the United States of America. In this building, many important decisions regarding nations and peoples, especially those who are suffering under authoritarian and totalitarian rules, are decided. So, for so long, for past 6 decades, Uyghurs have always longed to come here to let the members of U.S. Congress and the U.S. government to know and understand their terrible suffering under the rule of the Chinese government. But today we are here. Today we are raising our voices in this very building, letting the members of Congress and the U.S. government know our situation. So many Uyghurs yearn for this privilege for so long, but they have never been able to get such privilege. But today, we have the privilege and honor to come and attend in this very special event and be here with all. So that means so much for us, and we thank you all for coming and attending, and may God bless you all. Thank you. Ain't berang cerah nu curhat tang lama. Ya, mana yuan le cerah nya dulu tang lagi. Kalau mesti so. I'm
Put it up more. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Next, I would like to introduce the Honorable Lincoln Diaz-Balart, member of U.S. Congress. Congressman Lincoln Diaz-Balart is a senior member of the House Rules Committee and the ranking member of the Subcommittee on Legislative and Budget Process. In 1992, Mr. Diaz-Balart was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives from Florida's 21st Congressional District. He served as member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee during his first term and retained his seniority in that important committee. In 1994, Mr. Diaz-Balart became the first Hispanic in history to be named to the powerful House Rules Committee. The Rules Committee decides, of course, which legislation may reach the House floor and what amendments may be debated. In 1996, Mr. Diaz-Balart drafted much of the legislation that strengthened the embargo against the Cuban dictatorship. Mr. Diaz-Balart was specifically responsible for codifying the embargo, making the lifting of sanctions contingent upon the liberation of all political prisoners and the scheduling of multi-party elections in Cuba. As a member of the House Rules Committee, on September 14, 2001, Mr. Diaz-Balart took to the floor of the House the joint resolution authorizing the use of United States armed force against those responsible for the attacks of 9/11 against the United States. On November 13, 2002, he took to the floor the historic legislation creating the Department of the Homeland Security. It's our honor to have Congressman Diaz-Balart. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much. It's such a privilege to be here and to welcome you to the United States Congress. The United States Congress is an admirable institution because it represents the sovereign American people. And the American people support just causes. And the cause that brings you to the Congress of the United States this morning is a just cause. Let me just say a word about Revilla Kadir. I've been in the Congress of the United States now almost 17 years. And I've had the privilege of meeting many leaders representing many peoples from throughout the world. And I must say to you that one of the greatest privileges that I've had was when Revilla Kadir came to my office to explain to me in detail and in depth the plight, the suffering, and yes, the history of the Uyghur people. What a great privilege that was that day, and what a great honor for me it is to be her friend and to be a friend of the Uyghur people. You know, dear friends, you know, you're going to have, I'm sure, a very wonderful Congress today, and many distinguished guests will speak to you. I simply wanted to add my voice of welcome, of support, of solidarity, and of encouragement. Because remember that ultimately, the most important characteristic, the most important factor in any struggle is perseverance. Perseverance. And the most difficult struggles are the ones that require the most perseverance and the most insistence. And so I know that you will continue to persevere in representation of the people who you are here representing and thinking about, who cannot be here to speak for themselves. But you are their representatives. You are the representatives of an entire people, of an entire nation. And know that you have, in these halls of this institution, as I said this morning in an interview that I did earlier today, the first article, Article 1 of the Constitution of the United States, even before Article 2 and Article 3 created the other two branches of government, the executive branch and the judicial branch, co-equal in importance. Article 1 created this Congress, the Congress that represents the sovereign people of the United States. And the people of the United States, I know, are honored to be your friends and your supporters. And the more that you are able to inform the people of the United States of what is happening in your homeland and what is happening to your families and to your friends and neighbors, you will have more and more, deeper and deeper support from the generous people of the United States, and of course from their representatives here in the Congress of the United States, created by that first article of the United States Constitution, this Congress. It's an honor to have you here. It's an honor for you to be meeting here in the Congress of the United States. Best of luck, and we will continue fighting along your side until victory is yours. Thank you very much.
Man, Congressman Lincoln Diaz Balart efendining sözünü kısıkçadan tercüme qilib beray. Konqor ma'lumlik kuchli gapdan qilib berdi. Albatta oldi bilan sizlarning bu Amerika Davlat Majlisining binoga xo'sh kelibsizlar. Tabriklar. Bu binoning Amerika xalqiga, ya'ni Amerikaga bir egillik huquqi bor bir xalqiyat vakili qilganligi, ham Amerika hukumatining ham Amerika xalqining bir adil ya adalet uchun kurash qilgan xalqni qo'llaydiganligini, hem Uyghur davasının bir adaletli olan dava işkenliği deyildi. Analikin özünün Rabia Qadir Hanım bilen qanday görüşkenliğini, görüşkende qanchalik hayajonga to'lganligini, hem qanchalik sharafga ega bo'lganligini tushuntirib o'tdi. Bu so'zda men Amerika Kongressida ishlagan 17 yil bo'ldi. Mening oldimga nurg'un o'xshash bo'lmagan demokratiya, erkinlik uchun kurash qilgan odamlar bilan ko'rishgan, lekin Rabia Hanımdek bir insan bilen ben görüşkünüm yok. Şuna Rabia Hanım bilen görüşüş, ben için bir zor imtiyaz. Ben nahayet boşal buldum. Rabia Hanım benim şanım ki Uyghur halkının artık tatlıkan günü davası tarifini düşendiğim vaxtıda ben nahayet hayran kalıp zan koyup anladım. Hem Uyghur halkına qanday yardım qilishni o'ylashdim. Her bir milletning yoki her bir xalqning davosida yani en mühim narsa bo'lsa chidamchanlik, ya'ni bardoshlik berishdir. Eng mushkul da'vo qanchalik mushkul bo'lsa, shu xalq shunchalik chidish kerak, davomlash kerak. Shunga shu chidasa, bardoshlik bersa, sabr toqat bilan oldi qarab bo'lsa, ular cho'qim bir kuni o'zining erkinligiga erishadi. Shunga sizlar bugungi bu so'ron kelganlar, sizlar o'zingizlar emas, balki o'zingizning xalqiga, o'zingizning shu vatanlarda o'zining ko'ngil so'zini qilolmay azoblangan xalqlarga vakil bo'ladigan odamlar. Sizlar shuning vakili. Hamda o'sha Amerikaning asosiy qonunining yana birinchi moddasini so'zlab o'tib ketdi. Uningda yana birinchi moddasida o'sha Amerika Kongresi, Davlat Majlisi qurilish shu birinchi moddasida. Qolgan ijroiy namozidan prezident yoki sudning 2 һәм 3 маддада құрылған. Әмма бұл 3 Америка қанунында барабар орны тұсымы, әмма Америка асасы қанунында мұшы игілік құқық халық та болғаны үшін Америка Дәулет Мәжілісінің біріншілап тұрған. Шуныңға Amerika xalqi sizlarning do'stinglar. Sizlar har biringlar o'zingizning da'volari o'sha ziyonkashlikka uchrashinglarni, qanday qilib Xitoy hukumatiga shunday zarbaga uchraganligini, o'sha Amerika xalqiga to'liq tonitib tushuntirib bera olsanglar, Amerika xalqining ishini sizlarning do'stinglar bo'lgansiz ko'paydi, Amerika xalqi sizlarni qo'llaydi. Anan keyin oxirida sizlar bilan bugun bir so'rinli bo'lish va ko'rishish men uchun bir zo'r sharaf. Ben sizlerden qo'llayman, ben sizlerden qayninglarda turaman, toki sizlar g'alaba qozonguncha men sizlardan man ko'rilaman. Next, I would like to introduce the Honorable Congressman Christopher Smith. As a member of the United States House of Representatives from New Jersey, Mr. Chris Smith has championed the rights and interests of men. From children forced to toil in sweatshops, to women kidnapped and sold into slaves of prostitution, to urban children whose opportunity for life is threatened. Mr. Smith has dedicated his life to protecting human rights and helping the world's most vulnerable. Congressman Smith has represented the citizens of New Jersey's 4th Congressional District since 1981, when he was sworn into office at the age of 27. Throughout his 28 years of service, he has established himself as one of the hardest working, most compassionate, and dedicated members of the Congress. As a champion of global human rights since being elected to Congress, Congressman Smith, the senior member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and a ranking Republican of the committee's Africa and Global Health Subcommittee. Congressman Smith also serves as a ranking member of the Commission on Security and Cooperation in Europe, also known as U.S. Helsinki Commission, which works to promote and foster democracy, human rights, and stability in Eastern and Central Europe, and on the Congressional Executive Commission on China, which monitors human rights and the development of the rule of law in China. It's our honor to have Congressman Smith.
It is truly a privilege to join the World Congress on Uyghurs at this very important human rights event and to see my good friend Rabia Kadir. It is always an honor to be in her presence. I have some opening remarks, and like my other colleagues who are here or coming, again, I want to express my strongest solidarity with your concerns and your human rights aspirations. Today I want to make 2 appeals, which I know are at the heart of the World Uyghur Congress's mission, of Mrs. Kadir's own heroic work, and the work of many of us in Congress who will be joining you today. To the Chinese government, the message is simple. Respect the human rights of the Uyghur people. And to the governments of the world, including the Obama administration, in your relations with the Chinese government, make human rights a priority. At the moment, sadly, I don't see many signs that either the Chinese government or the new administration is listening. According to the U.S. Department of State's 2008 Country Reports on Human Rights Practices, the Chinese government's human rights record got worse last year. Likewise, the 2008 report of the Congressional Executive Commission on China, on which I serve as ranking member, reporting specifically on Uyghurs, gives us a long list of Chinese government abuses. It includes, quote, wide-scale detentions, inspections of households, restrictions on Uyghurs' domestic and international travel, control over Uyghur websites, and increased surveillance over Uyghur Muslim clerics, mosques, and believers. The Chinese government has ratcheted up its controls on Muslim religious practice, infiltrated groups of believers, forced women to remove head coverings, restricted observance of Ramadan, and prevented Uyghur Muslims from making the Hajj. In some cities, Uyghurs have been detained en masse, including children. There are ominous reports of genocidal policies toward the Uyghurs. I have met with women who have seen with their own eyes how the brutal, barbaric one-child-per-couple policy, with its heavy reliance on forced abortion campaigns, the horrific barbarisms, in the view of many, especially the human rights community and those who care about women and children, are more vigorously enforced on the Uyghurs than on other ethnic groups. And in what amounts to a program of cultural genocide, the Chinese government is marginalizing the Uyghurs in their own homeland. It has promoted a massive Han Chinese migration to historically Uyghur lands. At the same time, the government tries to disperse the Uyghurs throughout China. In the State Department's 2008 Trafficking in Persons report, and parenthetically, I was the prime sponsor of the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, which created that report and our emphasis on prevention, prosecution, and protection of women. But in the 2008 report, we read reports that the government coerces young women to leave their native land to work in factories in eastern China, where they are often unpaid. In schools, the Uyghur language is being marginalized and in some places even eliminated. The list of abuses would have to include the government's cruel campaign against the family of my good friend, Mrs. Kadir. Since Mrs. Kadir now lives in the United States, the Chinese government harasses, beats, imprisons, and even tortures several of her sons, daughters, and other relatives, and thereby reveals its mafia-like side. Evidently, the government is angry. In the 1990s, it brought her, a successful businesswoman, into the National People's Congress, and she had the guts and the courage and the tenacity to stand up to them in Beijing and tell them what they were doing to her people. So in 1999, they imprisoned her for, quote, revealing state secrets. That is what they called the newspaper clippings that she sent to her husband in the United States. In 2005, the Chinese government released her, and she came to our country. Evidently, they thought they would force her to be silent by using her relatives as hostages. Needless to say, they didn't. I remember the boldness at which she spoke in a hearing that I chaired in 2006 on human rights. It is tragic beyond words that Beijing simply cannot understand the heart and the courage of a great patriot. In this case, a whole family of great patriots. I can't resisting adding an additional word to Ms. Kadir. How blessed you are, you and I, and everybody in this room, to have such an extraordinary witness on behalf of human rights. Just as bad or worse are the abuses the Chinese government visits on all the people of China, whether Han Chinese, Tibetan Uyghur, or others. The cruelty of the one-child-per-couple policy, with its heavy reliance on forced abortion that makes brothers and sisters illegal, the widespread use of torture in the police and penal system, religious persecution, and the censorship and surveillance of the internet, aided and abetted by U.S. corporations. And every citizen of the PRC suffers the massive injustice of one-party rule by communists that have given up their utopian dreams but remain determined to maintain totalitarian control. Yet the governments of the world seem determined to ignore all of this. Looking at my own government, a few months ago, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton effectively took human rights off the agenda with the Chinese government. Perhaps it'll get back on. She told the global media that concern for the protection of human rights of the Chinese people can't be allowed to interfere with the economic crisis, climate change, and security, as if human rights were disconnected and irrelevant to those issues. Nor has President Obama shown much interest in human rights either. In our policy towards Cuba, Venezuela, Iran, and Russia, to name a few countries, human rights have been dramatically downgraded, and that has to change. That is the situation. The Chinese government's human rights record is worsening, while the concern of other governments appears to be diminishing. Despite this, I want to assure you that you have many friends in Congress on both sides of the aisle, Republican and Democratic, and who will insist to you that you have plenty of reason to believe that you will prevail and to leave this room more determined than ever to carry on your work. China will one day become a democracy, and perhaps sooner than we think. Remember Nicholas Ceausescu, Slobodan Milosevic, General Jaruzelski, Erich Honecker. Only a year before the fall of these communist dictators, they seemed like permanent fixtures. And the first generation of democratic leaders of Eastern Europe were in exactly the position you are in right now, preparing themselves in civil society organizations while the illegitimate government spied on them and pretended to ignore them. So I urge you to keep on working, keep hoping, and keep praying. Now and then I think you will find a communist official who will do something good for your people. Not many of them will have the virtue of, or courage of a Harry Wu, or of a Bob Fu, or Wei Jingshang, or Yang Jingli, or Rabia Kadir. But there are some good, if confused, people among them. Just 6 months ago, a Uyghur Muslim woman named Arizikul Tursan was being held under guard in hospital, waiting to be forcibly aborted. Twice she had escaped from the population control police, and the doctors were doing tests to prepare for the forced abortion. But Radio Free Asia learned of her plight, and my good friends Rabia Kadir, Joe Pitts, Frank Wolf, the cleric, the Grand Mufti of Bosnia, Ray Saric, and I began to make public appeals to the Chinese government. I spoke to Chinese Ambassador Mr. Zhao, who raised the issue at the highest level in Beijing. After almost a week in custody, the Chinese officials canceled the abortion and allowed Arzikul to return home. Great news for her and her baby, as well as her family. Believe me, I called the Chinese ambassador and I thanked him. We want to see more of that. Men and women within the government who will step up, however limited, and began to take a stand in favor of fundamental human rights. Someday you will work with democratic Chinese leaders to peacefully secure justice for the Uyghur people. Together you will write a new page in the history of human rights in China, as well as for the Uyghurs. In the meantime, I'm reminded of a simple message Pope John Paul II carried to Poland in 1979, and you have lived it. You've lived it with courage, especially Rabia Kadir. Be not afraid. I know you are not afraid, and that you will persist. God bless you, and God bless your struggle for justice and recognition of fundamental human rights.
Next, I would like to introduce the Honorable Congressman Frank Wolf. Congressman Wolf is the most senior of the 11 members of the House of Representatives from Virginia. He's serving in his 15th term in Congress. He represents the 10th District of Virginia, which stretches from McLean to Winchester. Congressman Wolf sits on the powerful House Appropriations Committee, where he's a lead Republican on the Commerce, Justice, Science Subcommittee. He also serves on the Transportation and Housing and Urban Development Subcommittee. In addition, he is a co-chairman of the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission, a bipartisan organization made up of more than 200 members of Congress who work together to raise awareness about international human rights issues. It's our honor to have Congressman Frank Wolf.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the invitation, and it's good to see my good friend Congressman Smith, who I've traveled to China with on many, many occasions here. Mr. Delahunt also, but Chris and I have been on these trips, so it's good to be here with him. I feel that candor and integrity require me to make note of the position that I have taken on the relocating of the 17 Uyghur detainees from the prison at Guantanamo Bay to the United States. And if I had not addressed that, I think it would not have been fair. There is a clear distinction between those individuals who have received training as terrorists and Uyghurs, those of you here who yearn for democracy and fundamental freedom and rights and freedom to worship. Some may disagree on this matter, as is your right in the United States of America but our ability to do so, to have difference as part of this great country. And healthy democracies, as in the United States, in contrast with China, is an example of that. I stand firmly behind the Uyghur community in the struggle with regard to human rights and religious freedom in China. And unfortunately, over the last several years, the human rights conditions in China has steadily gotten worse. In the last 10 years, it's gone from perhaps almost improving to whereby it's much worse. And since the Obama administration has gotten in, Secretary Clinton has failed to address this issue over and over, whereby she could have spoken out for human rights and religious freedom. The Chinese Communist Party has intensified its harsh crackdown against the Uyghurs in regard to the Protestant Church. Christian human rights attorney Gao Jingshang was kidnapped from his home by the Chinese security police over 100 days ago for speaking out about the torture he endured, and today his whereabouts are unknown. And is anyone in the Obama administration asking about him or trying to visit him? I cringe to think of the treatment he is currently enduring at the hands of the Chinese government. In 1998, I went to Tibet. We went in with a private trekking group to see firsthand what the Chinese communists were doing with regard to the Tibetan community. We went back into the monasteries and talked to young Buddhist monks and nuns, many who had been in the Dropsy prison and who had been tortured. Lhasa, many Tibetan buildings in Lhasa have been bulldozed and destroyed, whereby they're trying to destroy the Tibetan culture in that city. And yet the Chinese government places severe restrictions on those in Tibet who want to demonstrate for human rights and for freedom. With regard to the Uyghurs, the Chinese government places severe restrictions on the peaceful religious activities of the Uyghurs. The Uyghur people are currently regularly being detained as they travel and try to move around the country. Reba Kadir, who I'm honored to be with today, has suffered in prison for 5 years before she was released to the United States. For 5 years, there was a congressional delegation going out into the region, and she was arrested as detained and put in prison for five years. And after her release, her 2 sons, both who are now in prison today, and her daughter was under house arrest. But Reba Kadir is a fighter. She has not let her personal hardships deter her fight for freedom and human rights in China. I traveled to China for the first time with Congressman Chris Smith. We went into Beijing prison number 1, where Tiananmen Square demonstrators were making socks for export to the United States. And we then saw and found out that many of these demonstrators who had been arrested in Tiananmen were now in prison. Some today are still in prison, and very seldom do you get the administration, whether Republican administration or Democratic administration, speaking out, and very seldom, quite frankly, do you get the Congress speaking out on this issue. In the coming weeks, we will mark the 20th anniversary of the crackdown of Tiananmen Square. 20 years later, the Chinese government continues to ignore calls for political reform by its own citizens. Last winter, a group of Chinese democracy activists published Charter 08, a document modeled after Charter 77 issued by dissidents in Czechoslovakia calling for a democratic reform. The Chinese government responded by jailing and harassing individuals who signed the letter. Congressman Chris Smith and I returned to China last July, just 1 month prior to the Beijing Olympics. We were meeting with human rights dissidents, religious dissidents, but people who loved their country, but purely wanted the freedom to worship God or to be able to move around and spend time and doing things that are important to people who love freedom. And every one of the people that came to tried to come to our dinner meeting but one was arrested. And the one who made it to the meeting was arrested the next day. Congressman Chris Smith took a letter and we signed, and of all the dissidents, and every dissident from Catholics, Protestants, Tibetans, and Uyghurs, and Congressman Smith gave to Ambassador Lee, the current chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, and he almost kind of didn't want to touch it and didn't kind of want to deal with it. And the same time that all these people were arrested, the Secretary of State Secretary Rice was in town. And we thought that they would speak up and advocate for it. And the next day at the briefing with the Foreign Secretary and the Secretary of State, the conversation was more on what venue, what Olympic venue they were going to go see, and not on speaking out on behalf of those who have been persecuted and who have been arrested the very time the Secretary was in Beijing. At a local internet cafe in Beijing, we found our attempts to access the State Department Human Rights Report, the National Endowment for Democracy report, were blocked. The reach of the Chinese government does not stop at its borders. In 2006, Reba Kadir called my office seeking assistance because she noticed a suspicious vehicle outside her home in Northern Virginia. I called the FBI and we asked them to run a license plate check that was seen outside of Reba Kadir's home, and my suspicions were confirmed. The person driving the car was a Chinese who was trying to become an American citizen, who said he wanted to come to America for freedom, but was basically cooperating with the Chinese government, and he was bringing 2 public security people in Fairfax County coming out to spy on Reba Kadir. And my suspicions were confirmed when the FBI gave us a briefing on this. The same year, my computers on Capitol Hill office, along with Congressman Smith and the IR committee, were hacked in by the Chinese government. China continues to wage aggressive cyber attacks against the United States government. Despite all this, on the first trip to China, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton refrained from speaking out against the abuses of the Chinese government. And I was critical of the Rice tenure at State Department, and also critical now of the beginning of the Hillary Clinton term at the Department of State. And I think it's important for members, both Republican members and Democratic members, to be willing to speak out on truth, even if you have to go against your administration. Because I think these important issues of human rights and religious freedom, and standing up for the Catholic bishops, standing up for the Protestant church, standing up for the Falun Gong, standing up for the Uyghurs, standing up for the Tibetans, and standing up is very, very important. And we cannot, and I say to my colleagues in this Congress, we cannot continue to separate the issues of trade and human rights in our dialogue with China. This approach has gotten us nowhere. I call on Secretary Clinton and the Obama administration to make human rights a top priority in our bilateral relationships with China. I call on the incoming U.S. ambassador in Beijing to ensure that our embassy serves as an island of freedom. Our embassy in Beijing should be an island of freedom, that anyone who yearns freedom. During the days of communism in Eastern Europe, the American ambassador used to invite the dissidents in, the human rights activists in. The American embassy was sort of an island of freedom that people could come. And our embassy hopefully will be an island of freedom again. I call on the government of China to listen to the voters, because most of the people in China love their country, are good, decent people, but they yearn for freedom. I would also say to the Uyghur community today, those of you from the United States and those from around the world, it is important for you to join with other dissident communities or other communities of human rights, to join with the Catholics who are concerned with regard to the persecution of the Catholic Church, to join with Bob Fu, who's concerned about the persecution of the Protestant house church leaders, to join with the Falun Gong, and no one speaks out for the Falun Gong. They have probably suffered as much as anyone. To join with Harry Wu and Wei, 2 dissidents who are out there speaking out against the Chinese government. To join together in a coalition, together, to come together. And the journey will be long, and the journey will be hard. Ronald Reagan in 1983 gave the speech that he was criticized by both Republicans and Democrats for, where he called the Soviet Union the evil empire. And they said that was provocative, that he should not have done it. But Ronald Reagan said, tear down that wall. And Ronald Reagan stood up. And during that period of time, from 80 to 88, Al always advocated for the dissidents in Eastern Europe and in Russia and places like that. And we now have seen that the Berlin Wall has fallen down. Sometimes I think the Chinese have gotten Ceausescu's playbook. Ceausescu was the head of the Romanian government, and they fell, and the Chinese government seems to be doing the same thing. I believe, in closing, I believe that we will all live to see freedom and democracy and justice in China. And if we work together, we will see it in our lifetime. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much, Congressman. Next, I would like to introduce the Honorable Congressman Bill Delahunt. Congressman Delahunt represents the 10th Congressional District of Massachusetts. He came to Congress in 1997 with a distinguished career in public service and law enforcement, has since been re-elected 5 times. He serves as member of the House Committee on Foreign Affairs and as chairman of the Subcommittee on International Organizations, Human Rights, and Oversight. His committee conducts oversight of key aspects of the administration's foreign policy. His jurisdiction includes oversight of his State Department, foreign aid and export assistance programs, arms control, democracy promotion, policies toward the United Nations and its affiliated organizations. The panel has also jurisdiction over the policies that promote human rights and international cooperation. Congressman Delahunt is also a member of the House Committee on Foreign Affairs Subcommittee on the Western Hemisphere. On this panel, Congressman Delahunt has worked to improve diplomatic relations through Latin America and to reverse the declining image of the United States in the region. It's our honor to have Congressman Delahunt.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here to celebrate the beginning of the 3rd General Assembly of the World Uyghur Congress. I want to thank Alim Seytoff for his invitation to speak and for all the work he does as General Secretary of the Uyghur American Association and Executive Chair of the World Uyghur Congress. It's a particular honor to be here with Mrs. Kadir, President of the World Uyghur Congress. She is a remarkable leader in the human rights community, forcefully advocating for the Uyghur people and for others. Her story is an inspiration to all of us, and I am truly honored to be with her here today. However, I wish I was here under different circumstances. I wish the Uyghurs were free everywhere to express their religious, cultural, and ethnic heritage. But the truth is, at this moment, it is a perilous time for the Uyghur people. In China, the Uyghurs are oppressed. You suffer persecution at the hands of a communist government that does not respect and, in fact, seeks to destroy your hope for freedom and self-determination. You are struggling against a formidable and well-equipped world power. As it has been stated before, Uyghurs are the Tibetans you've never heard of. It's true that we in Congress have passed a variety of resolutions condemning the Chinese government's actions and even officially recognized that the Chinese have manipulated the war on terror to persecute your people. But justice and liberty require more than rhetoric, particularly when it is within our power to act on our values and our principles. There are 17 Uyghur men incarcerated in Guantanamo. These men were sold to American forces in Afghanistan for a $5,000 bounty by Pakistani villagers interested in self-enrichment. Despite clearance by the Bush administration and a series of court cases that have found the Uyghurs there not to be enemy combatants, they remain in Guantanamo. Ironically, these men remain in Guantanamo not because of the danger they pose to the United States, but because of the danger the Chinese government poses to them. If not for the almost certain torture they would endure should they return to their homeland, these men would have been resettled years ago. But not only are these Uyghurs prevented from returning to their homeland, but the Communist Chinese government has actively undermined the U.S. government's efforts to resettle them to other countries by actively and successfully pressuring nations to reject them. Shamefully, we have even allowed Communist Chinese intelligence agents to come into Guantanamo and interrogate. Despite all our words and all our resolutions, we have let you down. And we have put America's judicial system and our moral standing in the world at risk. The Uyghur people are not enemies of America. In fact, I know you admire our fundamental ideals of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I know many of you view us as a beacon of hope and as an aid in your quest for fundamental freedom and human dignity. And that is why you are here today, to stand with us in our desire for true democracy and human rights. To prove that that commitment to these values is our best defense against terrorism and radical extremism of any kind. In 1788, our first president, George Washington, wrote that he had always hoped that our country, and these are his words, might become a safe and agreeable asylum to the virtuous and persecuted part of mankind, to whatever nation they might belong. And for the better part of our history, we have remained true to the words of George Washington. And today, we must remind ourselves of that unwavering American ideal. And we must not succumb to the politics of fear and division. Today, 17 Uyghurs, cleared of wrongdoing, sit in Guantanamo with that same hope. The hope that they too will have the chance to start anew and rebuild their lives. Unlike in years past, however, it's not a vast ocean that keeps these men from realizing their dreams, but the brutal politics of Washington. But I am confident that justice shall prevail.
Thank you very much, Congressman Delahunt. Next, I would like to introduce the Honorable Congressman James McGovern.
Well, thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm always honored to follow my colleague from Massachusetts, Congressman Bill Delahunt. It is a great pleasure for me to address the Third General Assembly of the World Uyghur Congress, which has brought so many Uyghurs from all over the world together this morning here in the United States Congress. I would like to thank the Uyghur American Association, the International Uyghur Human Rights and Democracy Foundation, and particularly the National Endowment for Democracy for the support of this gathering here in Washington, D.C. I am delighted that the World Uyghur Congress has chosen Washington as the venue for its General Assembly, as this does not only give us an opportunity to celebrate Uyghur culture, language, history, and literary achievements, but it also gives us in Washington an opportunity to stand publicly with you in your struggle for cultural autonomy and for your human rights. When over 60 years ago the People's Liberation Army took control of the then East Turkestan, and the People's Republic of China exerted its harsh and unrelenting control over your region in every aspect of your lives, not many people paid attention to this area, which is historically has played such an important role as an intersection of the Silk Road. All of you have begun to change our level of awareness. In Rabia Kadir's, the mother of all Uyghurs, you have found a strong and articulate voice that woke up not only the United States, but also the international community to the horrendous suffering of the Uyghur people. But Rabia Kadir cannot do it all alone, and your willingness to work in your countries of residence for Uyghur human rights is an enormous source of strength for your cause. That China still considers Xinjiang its most sensitive region became clear last summer, before, during, and after the Olympic Games. While China could not prevent the pictures of violent clashes in Tibet from being televised all over the world, the PRC immediately came down full force on the Uyghurs to prevent a similar embarrassment, utilizing the harshest of methods. To be clear, these draconian measures do not fade away after the Olympics, nor were they specific only to the Olympics, and the human rights situation remains very, very severe. Uyghurs are still unjustly imprisoned without a fair trial. Their mosques and schools arbitrarily closed. Uyghurs are discriminated against regarding employment and development opportunities. Uyghur women are internally trafficked for marriage or for sweat job purposes, and even the slightest hint of freedom of expression is considered splitism and terrorism. As we celebrate the tragic historic anniversaries this year in China, with the 40th anniversary of the Tibet Uprising, the 60th anniversary of the invasion of East Turkestan, and the 20th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre, there are also bright lights of hope for the Uyghur people, for the Tibetans, and for all Chinese citizens. Charter 08 has demonstrated clearly that no matter what ethnicity they are, people all over China thirst for freedom and democracy. Only democratic changes in Beijing and all over China will ultimately bring those human rights improvements to Xinjiang and Tibet that we all long for. But as we promote human rights in China, we cannot be hypocrites here at home. As we demand free and fair trials in the courthouses of Urumqi, we need to provide the same for the Uyghurs detained in Guantanamo. We cannot expect the world to miraculously resolve this problem of our own making for us, even if that requires making hard choices so we don't lose our credibility and our value. It is not enough, quite frankly, for the United States to ask that the Uyghurs in Guantanamo be placed in Germany or in some other European country. I believe that we have an obligation to help resettle at least some of the Uyghurs here in the United States. I think if we were to do that, it would make it much easier to resolve this situation as a whole. So as the co-chairman of the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission, I can give you my commitment that we will stand with you as long as it takes to bring real human rights change to Xinjiang and for all Uyghurs around the world. I am honored to be here today, and I am in awe of your commitment to human rights and your courage. Thank you very much.
Before Senator Brown comes, I would like to introduce our next speaker. Now, our next speaker is Ms. Barbara Hay. Please. And, let me introduce you. Okay, thank you. Yes, Ms. Hay is Vice President for Program Planning and Evaluation at the National Endowment for Democracy, where she has worked since 1985. And the staff which she oversees is responsible for the programmatic development, monitoring, evaluation of NED's International Grants Program, which covers 6 regions of the world. In recent years, she has overseen a vast expansion of the endowment's program in the Arab Middle East, especially in Iraq and Afghanistan. During the late 80s and early 90s, she oversaw the development and implementation of several large and complex democracy programs funded by the U.S. Agency for International Development in South Africa, Nicaragua, and Central and Eastern Europe. From 1981 to 1985, Ms. Hay was Special Assistant to the Associate Director of Programs and then to the Director of the U.S. Information Agency. She is a graduate of Georgetown University and has studied and worked in Latin America, Western and Eastern Europe, Asia, and Africa. It's our honor to have Ms. Barbara Hay.
And thank you so much for that very long introduction, because I'm just warning you, I'm going to keep my remarks very brief. I know you've heard quite a bit from Ned this week, and it's really been our pleasure to not only have you at the endowment, but our association with you and the Honorable Ms. Kadir and the Uyghur Congress, the World Uyghur Congress. I just want to say a few things as you start your actual working meeting, your business meeting, and sort of emphasize to you how very, very impressed we at the endowment are with so much progress that you've made since you were first founded in 2004. We felt very, very proud to be able to work with you, and we were just tremendously impressed with how far you've come. You really, I think, are making great strides in breaking through the propaganda and stereotypes that have been out there about the Uyghur people. You're bringing the true face of the Uyghur people to the U.S., the European community, and the world community, and I think that's really critically important that you stand up and speak for yourselves. You've done a great job in sort of reaching out to new communities, finding common ground with other nationalities, with other nations, and even now with some Han Chinese, which I think will be an area we hope to help you with in the future. We really encourage you to continue this effort. The way you're sharing your experiences with others who've also struggled for the right to maintain their identity as a people really can only enrich your own creative thinking as you develop new strategies and tactics for asserting your and achieving your goals. And really, finally, just a very heartfelt word that I know is expressed by many, many people in the very large community of Democrats that Ned has had the pleasure to meet over many, many years of work, now 25 years of work. Your efforts and your very persona has really inspired us at the endowment as we watched how sort of naturally and effectively you have joined the broader community of worldwide democracy activists. And we really congratulate you and hope you have a very successful meeting.
qisqa so'zlab ketay dedi. Bu degan chog'da o'sha sizlarning NEDga kelib Next, I would like to invite the Honorable Senator Sherrod Brown. Since voters in Ohio's 13th District first sent him to Congress in 1992, Senator Sherrod Brown has become one of Congress's most respected voices on health care, trade policy, job creation, the environment, and other rather important issues. Senator Brown is a ranking member on the Energy and Commerce Health Subcommittee. He also serves on the subcommittees on energy and air quality and commerce, trade, and consumer protection. Senator Brown's other assignments include the House International Relations Committee and its Asia and Pacific Subcommittee. Senator Brown has fought trade agreements that threaten American jobs, undermine environmental safeguards, and eliminate workforce safety protections. He believes international trade agreements should include protections for workers in America and across the globe, including fair wages, decent working conditions, and the right to unionize. As a fierce critic of the North American Free Trade Agreement, he played a key role in efforts to defeat fast-track trade negotiating authority in Congress. Senator Brown also spoke against granting China increased trade privileges until its leaders adhere to internationally accepted human rights practices. A member of the House International Relations Committee, Senator Brown has brought the global tuberculosis threat to the policy forefront. He led a 5-year effort that increased funding for international anti-TB programs from zero to the current $75 million. He is also the founding member of the Congressional Caucus for Taiwan and India. Senator Brown served 2 terms as Ohio's Secretary of State and 4 terms in the Ohio House of Representatives. Senator Brown's first book, Congress from the Inside, Observations from the Majority and the Minority, is in its 3rd edition, and his latest book, Myths of Free Trade, was published in September 2004. So it is our honor to welcome Senator Sherrod Brown.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here. Special thanks to Aleem and especially to Ms. Kadir. Thank you for the wonderful work you do and for bringing to the world's attention the plight of the Uyghurs and the plight in all you do for human rights. About a week ago, I was at a little restaurant, a little Chinese restaurant in my neighborhood in Washington, a place I eat regularly, and there were a group of others. There were only two groups of people in the restaurant where I was sitting at another table. You know, I wasn't really paying attention to the other tables. I walked out. A young woman came up and said to me, "Senator Brown, come back here for a second." And I walked back, and she pointed out at her table was a gentleman I knew 10 years ago and hadn't seen in 10 years. And he was a gentleman that whom I worked with in opposition to the permanent normal trade relations with China. And it was Wei Jingsheng. And Wei Jingsheng, as you know, was the electrician in the Beijing Zoo who spoke out against human rights abuses in China, was jailed for, I believe, about a decade in the 1970s and 80s, was released from prison when China wanted the Olympics to come there. When China didn't get the Olympics that time, Wei Jingsheng was again imprisoned. He then, his health suffered. He was about to die, they thought, in prison. They released him, they exiled him to Canada because the Chinese didn't want him to die on their watch. And he's worked very hard for human rights ever since. So after speaking to him for a moment through a translator, as I was about to leave the restaurant, I turned back and I said, "Mr. Wei, you are a hero." And I feel the same when I look at Ms. Cuddy, and I want to say to you, as he is, you are a hero to us. So thank you for that. And I thank all of you. All of you are heroes, that you're standing up for your countrymen and women, you're standing up for human rights, you're standing up for social justice around the world. Those of you who are Uyghurs here joining us, those of you who are not, who are supportive of this movement, supportive of helping the thousands of people in a far-off place who have been denied the real rights of human rights and social justice. That's why I'm proud to have introduced the Senate resolution with Senator Inhofe that calls on China to recognize the cultural and religious rights of the Uyghur people in the Uyghur Autonomous Region. The resolution calls, as you know, for China to release innocent Uyghur political and religious prisoners. It calls for China to cease the harassment and the intimidation of the government-sponsored violence against peaceful religions and against political expression. And with this resolution and with your continued determination, we can begin to shift away from China's straightforward policy of aggression and repression. For too long, the United States of America, for too long, has looked the other way as China declares a war on human rights. And for too long, the United States has relied on a trade policy that always puts American corporate interests and profits above human rights, above human decency, above the treatment of workers in China, above the rights of people in Tibet, above the rights of people in Taiwan, above the human rights of people in the Uyghur Autonomous Region. And I believe that because of your efforts, because of your speaking out, it's going to matter as we continue with the new president to look at our policy with China in a different way. Only then can the Uyghurs and the Tibetans and the Taiwanese and other religiously oppressed populations enjoy the peace and the freedom that they deserve. As you know, for more than 4,000 years, Uyghurs have inhabited the legendary Silk Road, establishing a rich linguistic heritage, ensuring cultural exchange between the East and West, and have contributed to the rich diversity of Asia and the rich diversity of this world, and the rich religious diversity that we all enjoy and understand is so important to our cultural heritage as human beings. So I thank you. I especially, again, applaud the terrific work, the heroism of Ms. Kadir, and I thank you so much during Uyghur Recognition Week, and that you continue to stand up and fight for human justice and human rights and social justice. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Senator Braun. And Senator Braun'dan sözüne Next, I would like to introduce Mr. Hans Hagrifi. He's a co-director for the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission. Mr. Hagrifi was appointed to the Democratic staff of the House International Relations Committee in April 2003. His area of responsibility for the committee is global human rights. In addition, Mr. Hagrifi serves as Democratic Staff Director of the newly created Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission, the successor entity in the House of Representatives of the former Congressional Human Rights Caucus. Mr. Hagrifi serves as Democratic Staff Director to the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission, co-chair James McGovern. In his capacity, Mr. Hagrifi oversees the full implementation of House Resolution 1451, including the thematic advocacy of human rights and the administrative institutionalization of the Commission. Prior to this appointment, Mr. Hagrifi served as Executive Director of the Congressional Human Rights Caucus from April 30 to April 30, 1996. Founded in 1983, the Congressional Human Rights Caucus is a bipartisan working group on human rights of over 225 members in the House of Representatives, which was co-chaired by Representative Tom Lantos and Representative Frank Wolf. In his capacity as director, Mr. Hagrifi identified, researched, and brought to Congress' attention human rights violations throughout the world, and in particular the Uyghur human rights violations as well. Good. Uyghur Chisine Tajiman Brishan Krediche, and okay, yes.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Hans Vogel. I'm the Democratic Staff Director of the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission. It's very hard to speak after so many eloquent speakers, and I know that some of you I already had the honor of addressing earlier this week, so I will not repeat and bore you again with things that you've already heard this morning. Let me just reiterate what was said earlier about our continuing efforts in support of Uyghur and cultural autonomy. Obviously, this is an ongoing and long struggle. You came and you have moved this struggle from relative obscurity that has long hampered your efforts to get more public attention to your struggles and to the human rights situation that exists. And you were able to lift your smack into the limelight of the international community. We are able to shine the spotlight now on the human rights violations that occur in Xinjiang, the suffering of Uyghurs all around the world, and we will continue to do so. So you have our commitment that the Assembly Human Rights Commission will stand with all of you as you work in your own countries. And this is so great to see so many from so many different countries around the world. And we will help you, because one thing is clear, that human rights issues, that's not an American issue alone. Human rights issues and the protection of human rights involves the entire international community. And when Uyghur rights are violated in Xinjiang, in a small prison in Urumqi, when the children of Rabia Kadir, Alim and Mabliki, are still imprisoned only because a congressional delegation happened to be in town. And the Chinese authorities were freaking out that somehow they would have contact with us. When they're Uyghurs routinely arrested for speaking out, then the international community, it is a job for the international community to stand up and speak with one voice. We will be part of that voice, and we will coax our example other countries in speaking out for Uyghur rights. And Rabia, who is your leading voice, has undertaken tremendous efforts to raise the awareness internationally. And with her books and in her speeches and her courageous statements, not only before Congress, but as I said, in her travels internationally, she is able to achieve that, to bring together an international consensus. Let me also say that that the United States has obviously recently won a seat on the UN Human Rights Council. This gives us another form for international pressure. The Human Rights Council, to gain and maintain its credibility, obviously needs to immediately focus on the plight of the Uyghurs around the world, but certainly in Xinjiang and throughout the rest of China. We do not want people to be sent back to China in contravention of international law, both from their regional neighbors or members of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization or anybody else for that matter. We have made that commitment, and we will fight for that commitment, that we will bring these protections for Uyghurs in the region that live in neighboring countries, so that they feel that they are safe and not have to be afraid when somebody knocks at their door, that very well could be the police grabbing them to be sent back to China. With that, I would like to close. I wanted to thank you for all your work, for coming here today from all over the world and to attend this Third General Assembly. The World Uyghur Congress is doing an incredible job, and as somebody who was born in Germany and raised in Germany, I take no little pride in the fact that the World Uyghur Congress is in Munich, and that so many of you have chosen my native country as a country of residence that you have. So let me particularly welcome all of you who live in Germany and say we will stand with you, of course. And I always hope that you view the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission as your voice in the U.S. Congress, as your voice with the U.S. government, and that we will do everything to help you to elevate your voice internationally as well. Thank you very much.
Next, I would like to introduce Ms. Kara Abramson. She's Advocacy Director of the Congressional Executive Committee on China, where she focuses on ethnic minority rights and religious freedom in China. She holds a JD from Harvard Law School, where she focused on international human rights law. In addition, she has studied law and researched the Chinese legal system as a Fulbright Fellow to the Sichuan University Law School. She has published on topics including the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region and Chinese legal education. It's our honor to have you, Karen. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. Hürmetli Uyghur dostlar. Ben ismim Kara Miriam Abramson. Ben Amerika Devlet Üniversitesi ve hükümetinin Xitay İşbirliği Komitesi'nin Uyghur Üniversitesi boyunca mesul xadimiyim. Ben düşün gündeki yakında Xitay hükümetinin Uyghurlarga qaratan dini siyasi hakkında to'xtaldim. Bugungi keskin nutqimda Xitay İşbirliği Komitesi'nin tezini to'xtalmoqchiman. Komitetimiz 2000 yılı Amerika Koşma Ştatları Devlet Meclisi tarafından tesis edilen hükümete tabi bir organ. Komitenin zemizge alan mesuliyetleri, Xitay'daki kişilik hukuk ahvali hem de kanuni idare kılış tarakkiyatını tekşiriş, yönetmeler boyunca her yılı Amerika Devlet Başlığı hem Devlet Meclisi'ne yıllar topla tayarlap takşirişten ibaret. Bunlardan başka biz yine mezkur mezmunlar boyunca kiska xevet gezip, jurnal neşri kılış, guvallık görüşlerini içiş, kişilik hukuk teşkilatları bilen sizleşiş kıtarlık faaliyetleri bilen bu şıklılarımız. Komitesimiz Amerika Devlet Meclisi'nin Kengeç Palası'nın 9 nefer, Avam Palası'nın 9 neferinin 9 nefer ezasıdın Amerika hükümetinin herkesi organlarının 5 nefer emniyetçilerinin terfi tapkan. Hazırki reisi Kengeç Palata ezası Byron Jordan. Muavin reisi Avam Palata ezası Sander Levin. Hazır komitetimizin günlük hizmetlerini yeni 2 direktör hem de yeni özücüge alan 10 hadim edip vardı. Onların etkanda kadınlarımız Xitaycılığa, Xitayşınasılık, Boğdatlı Xitay'ın kanuni sistemini biliş tecrübelerine ege. Şimdi biz yeni Xitay'da bir mesul olarak Xitay'ın ahvalini bir kadar yaxşı düşüngen. Bundan sonra komitede işlegenimge 3-20 yıl oldu. Ben bu hizmetini başladığımda Uyghur meselesini tekrar yaxşı düşünüş. Boğdatlı Uyghurculuğda yazılan materyallardan faydalanış ve Uyghurlar bilen bivasite sizleşik mevzusu bilen Amerika'daki bir nefçe okutkucuların Uyghurca öğrendim. Komitetimiz tesis kılmakandan beri Uyghur meselesi bizning alayda dikkatimizga erişip kaldı. Biz başkatım Uyghurlarga yakın açtık. Komitetimizin her yılı elan kılırılan yıllık toplantılarında Uyghur meselesiga o'rin berildi. 2008 yılı toplantımızda birinci katım Uyghurlarga maxsus bölüm aytırdık. Bu ayrım bölümde 2008 yılda Xitay hükümetinin Uyghur eliga qaratan bastırış hareketlerini küçültkenliğini bayanat kıldık. Toplakta Olimpik tüzüş için kullanılan mümkünlükünü saklaş tedbirleri, Xitay hükümetinin terörizmge karşı terör hareketinin güçlenmesi, Xitay hükümetinin Tibet'te yaptığı Uyghur ilinde, mesela Xotan'daki yüz bergen namayışlarının aldığını yürüyüş için kullanılan tedbirleri, Kıtarlı kanunlar Uyghur ilindeki bastırışının tekini yaklaşışına tesir fırsattı, dep bayana kıldı. Toplakta yeni Xitay'ın Uyghur elindeki dini siyaseti, söz ergenlik ahvali, koşturuluk mağarip siyaseti, planlık hukuk siyaseti, Xitay hükümetinin Rabia Kadırhanı'nın aile tuvabiyatlarına qaratan parakende kılış hareketi, Xitay'dan kelgen Uyghur mütefirlarının ahvali, Uyghur elindeki kanun sistemisinin ahvali, Kıtarlık temalar boyunca tepkimat mevzumatlarını verdi. Biz her yıllık toplantılarımızda Xitay'ın kişilik hukuki ahvali ve kanun terakkiyatı hakkında teklif layihesi tayarlap, Amerika hükümet ve kollaş teşkilatlarına Assambly milletlerinin kanun iştiraka yardımlarının kadınlarının terbiyeleşini teklif kılış. Hürmetli dostlar, eğer halksanlar hukuk tekliflerini okuş için dostlarınızın tordan tapılaysızlar. komitetimizin internet forsayeti www.cec.co. Takırsın var, bilir doktorların başka her memnunlar, mesela aylık jornallarımız, şimdi de yeni üretinden ve başkalarının elbet aldığı adresi, katalog uçurlarını tabulaysılar. Turumuzdan bizim kaynaklarımızı yarış için müşteri kurulaysılar. Biz bu yılın Kürtes'te 2009 yıllık doktorumuzun meşhur kılınız ve mezkur doktorumuzun torha çaplak koyunuz. Aziz dostlar, Uyghur Televizyonu işçilerinde Uyghurlarının verme haydi etniyetler, etniyetsizliği bilip aldım. Bu olsun, sektörge tayanıp yaşamay, tedbirge tayanıp yaşa, gen etniyetsizliğidir. Benimce bu intayı memnunluksuz. Ben bugün sizlerin vatanlardaki Uyghurlarının geçme korku vaziyetini yakışlaş tedbirlerini tüzür ve müzikere kılmış yığınlarda sözler fırsatı İGB Hanlıkı'ndan da hoşal oldum. Anlayınlar için çok rahmet. I'm not going to ask Aline to interpret for me, nor am I going to translate everything I said. But just to give a brief summary, I gave a brief overview of what the Congressional Executive Commission on China does. I described its composition. I noted that Byron Dorgan is the current chair, Sandra Levin is the co-chair. I repeated the 4 recommendations that we made in our 2008 annual report and invited people to visit our website for more information, which I will also invite all of you to do as well for more information about the Commission. Thank you.
Kendini yapmaksanla yapsanla çıkıp süzülsene. Namaz bekliyorum. Thank you, Kara. That's an excellent Uyghur. It's amazing for a U.S. official. And next, I would like to introduce Mr. Marino Ustashin. He's a well-known fighter for freedom and human rights. Of course, he is a General Secretary of the Unrepresented Nations and Peoples Organization. Mr. Ustashin was born in Umago, Styria, Croatia in 1956. He arrived as a refugee in Italy in 1961. He had his education at the Law University of Trieste. During the 1970s, he campaigned for civil rights in Italy, mainly focusing on the rights to conscientious objection, divorce, and reproductive rights. He was an active participant, well known in the political Italian scene. In 1974, he was elected for the first time member of the Federal Council of the Radical Party. Between 1978 and 82, he was elected member of the City Council of Trieste. During the 1980s, he was one of the most active promoters of international campaigns in support of the respect for human, civil, and political rights in Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union. He was arrested in Bulgaria in 1982 and in the Soviet Union in 1989. He led and coordinated the transnational radical party activities in the former Yugoslavia and in the Soviet Union. As of 1993, he worked in the U.S. on international campaigns for the establishment of the ad hoc tribunals on war crimes in the former Yugoslavia and Rwanda, and on the campaigns for a moratorium on the death penalty at the United Nations. He was coordinator for the TRP activities in the U.S. from 1993 until 1998. In 1995, he led the initiative of the TRP to be recognized by the UN as an NGO on first category. He was a founder and general secretary of the NGO, I'm sorry, this is Italian, I think. I can't read that. I apologize for that, in Italy, as well as founder and president of No Peace Without Justice USA. Sorry. Both of the organizations were considered more effective NGOs campaigning for the establishment of an international criminal court, at the United Nations Diplomatic Conference on ICC in Rome in 1998, he was invited to take the floor representing civil society. From 1995 until 2000, he was a UN representative in Geneva, New York, and Vienna. Mr. Bustashin was a member of the Extraordinary Executive Board of TRP from 2000 to 2002. Currently, he is a member of the General Council of the Transnational Radical Party. As of July 2003, he was appointed Executive Director of the United Nations, Unrepresented Nations and People's Organization to help revive the organization. On November 14, 2003, Mr. Bustashin was appointed UNPO as Interim General Secretary. And on 26th of June 2006, he was officially elected UNPO General Secretary. It's our honor to have Mr. Bustashin here with us.
Yes, I really feel just a bit older than what I am, which is my geographical now. All right. Mr. Chairman, I have the honor and the privilege to be here today to convey to you the compliments and the solidarity of the Unrepresented Nation and People's Organization, the UNPO. I would like to take also the opportunity to express my gratitude to Rabia Kader and to Alim Setov, the General Secretary of the Uyghur American Association, for inviting me to address you at this special occasion here at Capitol Hill, a place that itself is a symbolic of freedom and democracy in the world. I also send the UNPO cordial greetings to Dolkun Isa, Secretary General of the WUC, and to Erkin Alptekin, who for different reasons are unable to attend this meeting today. If they can make a little jokes, Dolkun Isa is still waiting for his visa after 5 months. First of all, on behalf of UNPO, I convey to you the greetings of the other 56 members of the organization, many of whom share the unfair and unjust struggle that being an unrepresented people poses, and the subsequent struggles to acquire human, civil, and political rights, democracy, and rules of law. In a world that is rapidly globalizing, territorial interstate conflicts continue to challenge international security measures, prevent the acquisition of democracy, and inhibit the potential for peace. They deprive millions of peoples of their basic human rights. In this new world, the principle of and the right to self-determination acquires new significance within the nexus of democracy, development, and peace. We have to approach the matter by considering the concept of self-determination in broader sense. Self-determination is, and I quote, an ongoing process of choice in order to achieve, in different specific situations, guarantees of cultural security, form of self-governance and autonomy, economic self-reliance, effective participation at the international level, land rights and the ability to care for the natural environment, spiritual freedom, and the various forms that ensure the free expression and protection of a collective identity in dignity as a fundamental people's rights. It is absolutely necessary to underline that it is denial of the right to self-determination, a right enshrined in international law, that has come in some cases ignited and fueled conflict, rather than acquisition of these rights. Over the last 20 years, the UN has produced research and generated serious debate on self-determination. It has become evident that earlier in the work is conceptually inadequate to address new ideas of self-determination, especially with respect to ideas of internal self-determination as genuine autonomy. We need to act as a UNPO in a large network in order to produce a reformulation of the theory that process of the acquiring self-determination would and could contribute to conflict prevention and resolution. In this way, the officially adopted Universal Declaration of the Rights of People, and I must underline that it never has become a universally accepted document, should form the vital foundation for an international system that guarantees international law. This happened with the establishment of the International Criminal Court, which operates on crimes of genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes. It was established after UN diplomatic conference in Rome in 1998, and is ratified today by the majority of countries around the world and in international treaty. Distinguished panelists, dear friends, let me now tell you that I sincerely believe that the time is ripe to consider democracy as a fundamental human right. We should have the goal of operating in a system of communities of democracy in order to extensively reform the United Nations and international organizations. The issue today, in my opinion, is not how to stop globalization. The issue is how we use the power of community and combine these with the implementation of the principle of justice and democracy. If globalization works only for the benefit of few, then it's bound to fail, in my opinion, deserves to fail. The alternative to globalization is mere isolation. We need to globalize justice, we need to globalize democracy, principally to bring about the most fundamental rights of all oppressed people. Therefore, I believe that it is a fight for freedom, and it is a fight for justice. I underline freedom not only in the narrow sense of a personal liberty, but in the broader sense of each individual having the economic and social freedom to develop their potential to the fullest. By the strength of our common endeavor, we achieve more together than alone. This session of the World Uyghur Congress could be an important step to relaunch concept and initiative for the survival of the Uyghur people. I know that many of you doesn't like the word survival, but I strongly believe that it is first and foremost a fight for the survival of the Uyghur people. The survival of the Uyghur language, culture, and belief. They have a right as a people, the Uyghur, to acquire autonomy, democracy, freedom, and self-determination. As I look around and observe you all, so as my glasses cannot see very well, I feel a great admiration for you, for your dedication and devotion. And I'm more than aware of your commitment, and therefore wish you all the strength to reach your set goals. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mustashin. Next, our speaker, Mr. Kumar, who is Asia Director of the Amnesty International, who is not here. So actually we have a very special guest. We are ahead of our time, so I would like to invite that very special guest to the podium to make a few remarks. His name is Italian Senator Marco Perduca, who came all the way from Italy to attend the World Uyghur Congress, and he is one of our most distinguished guests, and he is also one of the leading voices in the Italian Senate and the European Parliament in championing the rights of the Uyghur people.
Thank you very much. It is also a privilege and an honor for me to speak here on Capitol Hill at the Congress, but also it is an even bigger privilege to be among the speakers for the third General Assembly of the World Uyghur Congress. When we organized together with the United and Represented Nations and Peoples Organization a meeting in The Hague 2 years ago with the support of NED, Erkin Altekin reminded me that the first time that the word Uyghur appeared in an international document was in a resolution at the European Parliament in 1993. So we are talking about 16 years ago. And that was actually the first time not only that the word appeared, but that in fact the issue of the Uyghurs was being presented to European legislators. Since that day, 16 years ago, I think we have been able to spread the news of what has been going on for way more years in East Turkestan to not only the European Parliament, but also national parliaments, especially parliaments where there are Uyghur communities, and in particular Germany, I would say. But I am not sure that we have been able to, in fact, lend all the support that the Uyghurs need in Europe and the United States to make advancement for the cause of freedom, democracy, for the Uyghurs as much as for the Chinese. From the beginning of the legislature in which I've been elected to the Senate for the first time, I have been carrying this Uyghur flag pin that was given to me by Rabia Kader last year at another meeting we had in Berlin. And every senator that meets me asks me what kind of flag this is. And I said, well, the day in which you will tell me, oh, this is an Uyghur flag, I'm sure I will not need to wear the flag on my jacket every day. But this little pin has been able to bring me, but most of all the Uyghurs, to the first page of the major Italian newspaper that's called Corriere della Sera in July, when the Kashgar accident happened, because everybody was very much afraid that terrorism was going to China on the occasion of the Olympic Games. And so I was interviewed, and not only I was interviewed, but I sent them pictures of all the NPO meetings, as well as the pictures of Rabia Kader with Marco Pannella, who's the founder of the Nonviolent Radical Party, and the pictures of Emma Bonino and Rabia Kader, Emma Bonino being the Vice President of the Senate. So in a way, the fact that members of the Radical Party were supporting the Uyghurs helped in constructing the reputation of the Uyghurs being freedom fighters through nonviolent and peaceful means, rather than the terrorists that they were trying to portray in the international press. I don't want to take more of your time, but if on the European and American side we have been able, and you've heard 7 members of Congress this morning speaking very passionately about the support that they are ready and they have been bringing to your cause, I think we now need, from your side, guidance on how to, in fact, continue this common struggle for freedom and democracy and human rights in East Turkestan and for the Uyghurs inside and outside China, because many of you also live in former Soviet republics nearby. I hope that at the end of your 3rd General Assembly there will be documents that could be circulated to all the legislators that support your cause, the human rights defenders, the human rights organizations, because this network that has been built over the last 15, 16 years, also thanks to that very first resolution at the European Parliament, needs to have you as one of the major players, because at the end of the day is your life, your freedom, the life of your families, the life of your friends inside East Turkestan that we're talking about. I don't know if next term at the European Parliament the members of the Radical Party will be ready to help you. There are elections going on in 2 weeks. In Italy, we have changed the electoral law for the European elections, so everything is going to be a little more complicated. I'm not saying that Italy is becoming a little China. Maybe China is becoming a little Italy, I don't know, but or big Italy. But we see democracy going down a little bit also in the free world. None of you is not an electoral campaign over here, but just to let you know that there may be problems in putting again the Uyghur name in addition to other resolutions of the European Parliament. Finally, I just got a text message before when Marino was speaking from Marco Pannella, who wanted me to greet you, and in particular Rabia Kader, for not only her continued support that she lends to us. Paradoxically, we also need as much support from others than you do. But to let you know that he is on the 7th day of a hunger and thirst strike to denounce the lack of, I would say, coverage of elections. This may not affect you today, but I think that if you are not ready, not only to give us guidance on the main objective, but also to practice non-violence in the Gandhian way, to try and pursue political objectives. We will need in 3 years, perhaps to repeat the same things, but without having done the little step forward in the right direction for your just cause. So this was a piece of information, but also a call to be ready also to practice nonviolence inside of Kyrgyzstan and around the world. And with this, I thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to address the
Next, I would like to introduce a very important speaker, Ms. Liao Tianqi. She is the director of the Laogai Research Foundation. Ms. Tianqi was born in China, but grew up in Taiwan. After finishing her BA studies in English literature in the Taiwan National University in Taipei, she went to Germany in the early 70s. She worked at the Institute for Asian Affairs in Hamburg. Together with the team, she edited the German-Chinese Dictionary, German-Chinese Vocabulary of Politics and Economy, published in Berlin in 1977, as well as the 7 volumes of Mao Zedong's collected works. She received her MA degree from the Ruhr University Bochum between 1980 to 1982, and worked at this university as a lecturer. At the Ruhr University, she taught Chinese language and literature from 1985 to 1991. She became the head of the Richard Wilhelm Language and the Wilhelm Research Center for Translation in 1992. Later, created a library of translation. She was also the editor-in-chief of the Chinese-German literature translation series, Arcus China Text. Till she left for U.S. in 2000, the series has published 20 volumes. The human rights advocate, Mr. Harry Wu, we all know him very well, invited Ms. Liao Tianqi in 2000 to join his human rights work in the Laogai Research Foundation. She served as the director of the Laogai Research Foundation from 2001 to present. In 2002, the affiliate China Information Center was founded, and she was assigned as Mr. Wu's deputy in the New Initiative Institute, parallel to her duty in the Labor Research Foundation. She is responsible for all the publications in the 2 institutes. She regularly writes analytical articles and commentaries about political, social, cultural issues in China. So it's our great pleasure to have Ms. Liao Tianqi here.
Thank you very much for the very kind introduction. I'm very honored to speak to you on this very important occasion. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you as a Chinese. And I want to show you my respect and my sympathy to your brave fight for freedom and justice. The relationship between the Chinese Communist Party and the Uyghur population at the present time is most certainly an ironic one. Since the Opium War in 1840, the Chinese have greatly feared the influence of foreign powers. Perhaps the greatest psychological stigma suffered by Chinese to the present day is a fear of being divided and annexed by the Western imperialist countries. The inferiority complex mutates into a blind patriotism and nationalism, which results in a so-called Han chauvinism. China must be powerful and large. Chinese territory is holy and cannot be violated. Those who read Chinese can find these kinds of phrases not only in the official texts, but also in school books. Amongst Chinese, their knowledge about Xinjiang or East Turkestan is influenced only by the CCP propaganda. For them, Xinjiang is a remote region full of exotic nostalgia. Few Chinese people have noticed that this region was once the turning point of East and West. Located in the heart of Asia, East Turkestan has played a pivotal role in the social, economic, cultural, and political development of the continent and the world in the past 2,000 years. It was on the Silk Road and the path through which the three world religions, Christianity, Buddhism, and Islam, along with Western ideas, products, and food, entered China. Here was the crossroad at which many ethnic groups, different cultures and languages, mingled with another in this rich and colorful civilization. The average Chinese does not have the knowledge that Uyghur people have fought against the Manchus again and again. And it was only the late 19th century the Qing dynasty could nominally claim the region as its territory, so it's called Xinjiang New Territory. In his democratic revolution in 1911, the founding father, Dr. Sun Yat-sen, claimed in his three principles theory, the new public is a public of 5 main nationalities: Han, Manchus, Mongols, Hui, Islam, and Tibetan. With the ascendance to power of the Chinese Communist Party, a new emperor betrayed this concept of peaceful coexistence and sent the army to invade Tibet and Xinjiang and declare these far-flung lands as an autonomous region of China. Today, the Uyghur people, the people of East Turkestan, are facing daily harassment and the control and surveillance of the Chinese authorities. Their identity and culture are suppressed. For decades, the Chinese government has promoted the mass immigration of Han Chinese to this region to take over privileged positions in the government and in the industrial and commerce fields. At present, the educational system is totally in the grip of the Han Chinese. Nowadays, the Han Chinese are over 40% of this population. In fact, in bigger cities like Urumqi, Kelamai, and Hami, the Han population are over 70%. Soon, the Uyghurs will become minorities in their own backyard. Aside from the atrocities of losing control of their own home, the Uyghurs have had to endure many violations of their basic human rights. Religious freedom is continuously violated. People go to the mosques under the gun of the Chinese soldiers. Uyghur women are mocked and censored for wearing their headscarves. Uyghurs are the only group in China to be routinely executed for so-called political offenses. The line of self-determination for your own nation has been labeled as separatism. The Chinese government used the September 11th, 2001 terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center to draw a parallel between the Uyghurs' independence movement and radical terrorism. Some would like the plight of the Uyghurs to that of the Tibetans. But Although you are not forced to go exile like Dalai Lama and his people, you are forced into exile in your own homeland. Because of your love of your own culture, your language and religion, because of your love of your own culture, your language and religion have become barriers which the Chinese Communist Party seeks to stamp out. What can we do as international community? And what can you do as the Uyghurs living outside China in freedom? You must celebrate your own history and culture and share it with the world. Do not let the Chinese government interpret your history. They distort the facts and truth. We know the Chinese officials are masters of manipulation. Let the world know, and especially the average Chinese know, that you have been an independent kingdom centuries before the Chinese came on your doorstep. The international community will support you in this. In seeking allies in your movement, please do not forget that Han Chinese, who have been just as much victims of the Communist Party as you have. Although justice in China is not blind, tyranny is. It is only with solidarity among all victims of communist oppression that a victory over the evils of justice can be won. Thank you very much.
Yes, something good is happening. Yes, and it is President Obama is speaking. It's breaking news about Guantanamo Uyghur detainees, and George Clark is one of the attorneys representing the Uyghur detainees in Guantanamo. He just got the information, so he's going to read us in English. I'll go the translation, please.
Thank you very much. Just let me read from this. This is a speech that apparently President Obama is giving right now. The New York Times has released this transcript of it. And he talks about Guantanamo generally, but he mentions the Uyghurs specifically. And I'm just paraphrasing from pieces of his speech, so it may seem like it's put together, but that's just the way we're going to have to do it. Indeed, the legal challenges that have sparked so much debate in recent weeks in Washington would be taking place whether or not I decided to close Guantanamo. For example, the court order to release 17 Uyghur detainees took place last fall when George Bush was president. As far as I know, that's the first time that President Obama, as president, has mentioned the Uyghurs specifically. Then later in the speech, he talks about what the plans are to deal with the detainees. He says at the end, or I guess towards the end, the third category of detainees includes those who we have been ordered released by the courts. Let me repeat what I said earlier. This has absolutely nothing to do with my decision to close Guantanamo. It has to do with the rule of law. The courts have found that there is no legitimate reason to hold 21 of the people currently held at Guantanamo. 20 of those findings took place before I came into office. Now, just so everybody's on the same page, 17 of those 20 are the Uyghur brothers, okay? And then it says at the end, the United States is a nation of laws and we must abide by these rulings. So that's President Obama saying, not necessarily right now, but that these men will be released.
Next, I would like to introduce one of our great friends, Mr. Vuchong Tsering. He is a vice president of International Campaign for Tibet and a close ally and supporter of the Uyghur people. Mr. Tsering was born in Tibet. His family fled to India in 1960 In the wake of Chinese Communist invasion of Tibet, he studied in India, receiving his BA in English literature from the University of Delhi. In 1982, he worked as a reporter for the Indian Express in New Delhi. Thereafter joining the Tibetan government in exile in Dharamsala, India, in January 1984. He has worked as the editor of the Tibetan Bulletin, the official journal of the Tibetan government. He joined the International Campaign for Tibet in Washington, D.C. in 1995, and he is currently the Vice President for Special Programs, overseeing Chinese outreach and Tibetan empowerment programs. He has spoken on Tibet in different colleges as well as Amnesty International organized events. Has contributed articles to Tibet, on Tibet, to Indian, Nepalese, Tibetan, Swiss, and American journalists. It's our great pleasure to welcome Mr. Burchak.
Good afternoon. I come here to mention three things to my Uyghur brothers and sisters. First of all, as a Tibetan, I'll come here to convey my warm greetings on the third Assembly of the World Uyghur Congress. The Uyghur people and the Tibetan people not only had a historical relationship, but also in modern times, during our unfortunate time in exile, His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the Uyghur people in the form of Isa Altakan and his son Erkin, and now with Madam Rabia Qadir, have had relationship which continues that historical tradition. And therefore I give you my warm greetings. Secondly, although it's only a few years since the World Uyghur Congress has been established, I believe you have been able to achieve significant successes. The most recent of all is just what we heard a few minutes back. We Tibetans have been fortunate enough to have a critical mass in exile in the late 1950s, and since then have been passing through many stages in our movement, which the Uyghur people are passing through now. And therefore, I'm saying this so that we can give you a comparative example of how you have achieved your success. Today, I believe you have been able to achieve three things. First of all, the Uyghur people have been able to establish that there is something called East Turkestan in the international community. That is significant because every time in the 1960s, we Tibetans have had to make that case. Secondly, the Uyghur people have been established the fact that there is a problem and an issue called the East Turkestan issue. We Tibetans have had to do that in the past many times. Today, if you can see in Washington, D.C. and in many European countries, you no longer have to establish the fact that there is an East Turkestan issue. That you have reached the next stage where you have explained what that issue is about and how you are trying to resolve it. I think that is an achievement that you have to be proud of. Thirdly, and in direct challenge to the Chinese leadership, you have been able to defeat the Chinese effort to term the entire Uyghur people as a terrorist group. And that is something I think, again, is because of the efforts of the World Uyghur Congress and the Uyghur American Association and the members of this community. This is the second point that I wanted to point out, because sometimes we people who are trying to struggle for our own causes tend to neglect our achievement or ignore our achievement and feel that our cause is not getting anywhere. The Tibetan people, even though we feel, and you may feel that we have achieved quite a bit of success, there are many voices in the Tibetan community that we have reached nowhere, that what are we doing, what is our leadership doing, where is our strategy? These are different questions that continue to be asked in the Tibetan community. And the Uyghur community may also be being asked the same sort of questions. But even as we ask ourselves these questions, I think we have to take the time to look at our successes. Then the third point that I wanted to raise is about the move forward in terms of the Uyghur people's movement. And here, while it's not for me to determine what you should achieve for or what you should strive for, as a Tibetan, as somebody who has been involved with the Tibetan cause for the last several years, I would like to outline again 3 points which you, the Uyghur brothers and sisters, might want to keep in mind as you continue your movement. This is essential in the long-term struggle and in order to find a satisfactory resolution of the Uyghur problem. The first point that you should keep in mind is that there needs to be internal unity among the Uyghur people. That doesn't mean that you cannot have differences of opinion among Uyghurs about what you want to achieve. But in broad terms, the Uyghur as a people need to be united in that you people are not being provided your respect, dignity by the Chinese leadership. The Tibetan people, as you may know, have that sense of unity, although there are voices within the Tibetan community in terms of what we want to achieve. There are people who want to achieve independence for Tibet. There are people who want to achieve autonomous status for Tibet. There are people who are currently satisfied with the Chinese rule. But all of us feel that we are one Tibetan. We have one objective, that is the survival of the Tibetan identity. And so this point that I feel our Uyghur people needs to keep in mind. Secondly, there needs to be close relationship between the Uyghur people outside of East Turkestan and inside of East Turkestan. This is critical because the Uyghur people outside are just a minority. The Uyghurs here don't represent the whole of East Turkestan. The people inside East Turkestan do that. And as His Holiness the Dalai Lama always tell us Tibetans, he is just a free spokesperson of the Tibetans inside Tibet. They are the master. It's they who decide what the future of Tibet should be. Similarly, the Uyghur people inside Tibet should have close ties with the Uyghur outside, and you need to show that close relationship, which is also essential for the Uyghur struggle. Thirdly, and I don't need to mention this to the World Uyghur Congress because it's clear from your mission statement that you have adopted a peaceful, non-violent approach to the struggle. But I need to emphasize that it's also for the benefit of the Uyghur people's own struggle that non-violence be the firm vehicle for your struggle. Sometimes there are people who feel that non-violence doesn't really give you overnight successes. But it's also true that it doesn't give you overnight damages. It doesn't cause negative impact on your movement. We Tibetans have known that, and His Holiness the Dalai Lama has always been very firm with this attitude. No matter where the Tibetan people will want the future of Tibet to be, he says we cannot forsake non-violence. So these are the issues that I thought I wanted to raise with you. I don't need to go deeply into your own cause and issues because you know it best. But here I've come to show my moral support and my friendship with the Uyghur people. Thank you so much.
He looks like a Uyghur. Mr. Kumar is not here. We have another 5 minutes. I would like to invite, last but not least, Mr. Anwar John, who was a former president of the East Turkestan National Congress. He brought greetings from the Uyghurs from Europe and other parts of the world.
Assalamu alaikum, Azir Pasha, distinguished guests, dear countrymen. I am very much honored to be among you and given the opportunity to address you briefly. Actually, I am caught unprepared. I was not expected that I will be able to speak to you. So I will limit my address, just saying few words about the diaspora Uyghur movement. I belong to to the first generation of diaspora Uyghurs who left East Turkestan in the 50s and early 60s. My family left East Turkestan 1961. Myself and our people, a group of 300 people, we walked the pioneers over to Afghanistan first and then to Turkey, and since 75 I have been living in West Germany. And I worked for 20 years at Radio Liberty, Radio Free Europe. In 1978, after the establishment of diplomatic relations between People's Republic of China and United States of America, the US administration shut down the small Uyghur section in Radio Liberty. As a young journalist at that time, with the close of the Uyghur section, I was very disappointed and lost my hopes. My hopes that an Uyghur voice never will be aired in a Western country, including United States of America. But the world changed, and after 3 decades, now the Uyghurs not only have Uyghur service in Radio Free Asia, but also our human rights movements are funded by corporations like National Endowment for Democracy. We have representatives in United States Congress who support the Uyghur human rights cause. And today, for the first time, the third General Assembly of the World Uyghur Congress is opened in the Capitol, in a building which is the center of democracy, the center of a nation who fights for democracy. This is a development which no Uyghur was dreaming of, and it is a development that we have friends in Western countries, including United States of America, and we have some achievements for the last decades with our leadership and with World Uyghur Congress, and we are proud of that. And as an elderly member of the Uyghur community, I will thank to the members of US Congress, to the non-governmental organization in the United States, and to the NED who are actively supporting the non-violent, democratic and freedom movement of the Uyghur people. Thank you very much.